Have you ever awakened with a lingering sense that something extraordinary happened while you slept? An unshakable feeling that you were somewhere else entirely, living a different life in a different realm? That sensation is not a trick of the mind. According to Edgar Cayce, one of the most documented psychics in modern history, it is your soul revealing the truth of its journey. For every single night, as your physical body rests, your soul detaches from it, gracefully, purposefully, and ventures into dimensions that the waking mind can scarcely comprehend. This isn't fantasy. Cayce's claim comes from over 14,000 documented trance readings, each one dictated while he lay in a self-induced sleep state, eyes closed, yet communicating from a level of consciousness that seemed to exist beyond time and space. From that mysterious place, he brought back revelations about health, purpose, karma, and what your soul is doing while your body sleeps. Your nightly slumber, it turns out, is not passive. It is not simply rest. It is a sacred act, a portal to another layer of existence. Cayce described it with astonishing clarity. The soul separates through what he called the silver cord, a spiritual filament that keeps your ethereal essence connected to your earthly form. Through this silver cord, the soul travels, not randomly, but intelligently, with purpose, with memory, with intention. It moves into dimensions shaped by your consciousness, your karma, your readiness, and it brings back with it the residue of those journeys. Insights, healings, awakenings, sometimes even trauma if one is unprepared. Consider this. Sleep may be the only state in which your soul is freed from the distractions of ego, the noise of personality, and the illusions of material life. It is the moment when your deeper self, the real you, slips quietly beyond the veil, guided not by logic, but by vibration. And what it sees there, what it learns and absorbs, returns with it into your waking world, whether you remember it or not. But Cayce didn't stop at generalities. He detailed where the soul goes, what it encounters, why some dreams feel more vivid than real life, and how those encounters are not mere projections of the subconscious, but actual experiences, conscious participation in the spiritual architecture of the universe. To him, dreams were never just dreams. They were maps, messages, soul memories leaking through the barrier of time. In one of his most significant readings, numbered 57541, Cayce explains that the soul's nightly departure is not limited to mystics or spiritual adepts. It is universal. Every soul travels. The difference lies in awareness. Most people, he said, go through their lives unconscious of these nightly miracles, squandering the profound possibilities within each dream cycle simply because they don't prepare, don't intend, don't listen. And this is where the journey begins. Not out there in the stars, but in you, in your willingness to believe that there is more to the night than rest, that there is a traveler within you, waiting, a voyager who never sleeps, who never forgets, who sees more than your eyes ever could. In the chapters ahead, we will follow that traveler. We'll walk beside it through the dimensions Cayce mapped with such precision, the Borderland, the Akashic fields, the realms of pure spirit. We'll meet the beings who wait there, witness the healings, feel the karmic unraveling, and ultimately, understand why each night of your life is a sacred opportunity to grow your soul in ways that waking life rarely allows. But first, you must remember one simple, life-altering truth. Your soul leaves nightly. You are never merely sleeping. You are journeying, always. And where does that journey begin? In a place both close and strange, a threshold between the physical and the eternal. Let us go there now, just beyond the edge of sleep, before your soul ascends into the loftier realms. It passes through a threshold known in Edgar Cayce's readings as the Borderland. This is not a metaphor, not a poetic flourish. It is a spiritual dimension that exists parallel to our physical world, a liminal space where the recently departed linger, where unresolved energies gather, and where those who sleep with a slightly open heart may find themselves face to face with souls no longer in the flesh. Cayce described this realm as densely populated with earthbound spirits. These are not malevolent forces, nor are they angels. They are human souls in transition, some confused, some healing, some still attached to the physical life they left behind. It is here, in this shadow-thin layer between worlds, that your soul first arrives on its nightly journey. And it is here where some of the most powerful and transformative encounters occur. Not all dreams are symbolic. Some are direct experiences of the borderland. Have you ever dreamt of speaking with a departed loved one, so vivid that you awoke with tears or a sudden clarity about life? Cayce insisted those were not dreams. They were soul-to-soul communions, real as any conversation over coffee. In one documented case, writing 2067-1, a businessman from Virginia came to Cayce, having recently lost both his fortune and his faith. Stricken with grief and desperation, he began having recurring dreams of his deceased father, who appeared calm, dignified, and deeply aware. In those dreams, the father gave specific financial advice, not metaphysical guidance, but actual instructions involving contacts, strategies, and risks. The man followed them. Within a year, he had not only recovered his fortune, but had built a business empire greater than before. Cayce later confirmed that these conversations occurred in the Borderland. They were not hallucinations of grief. They were genuine transmissions from a soul who still cared. This changes everything about how we view death. The dead are not unreachable. They are not gone. They are in a different vibrational band, and in sleep, our souls can match that frequency, if only briefly. But this realm isn't just a place of reunion. It's also a testing ground. Souls passing through the Borderland can feel the pull of old attachments, people, places, identities they no longer need. It's a mirror reflecting the unresolved. That's why, for some, it feels haunting. The Borderland reveals what still binds us to the material world, and if we are willing, it offers the first opportunity to release. The Borderland is also where spontaneous spiritual messages emerge. Many people have reported receiving warnings in dreams about accidents, betrayals, illnesses, only to see them come true. Cayce explained that in the Borderland, where souls drift close to the Earth's timeline, such messages can be sensed and conveyed. But again, the dreamer must be ready to receive, and even more ready to act. There's a reason Cayce emphasized spiritual hygiene before sleep. To enter the Borderland with fear, resentment, or distraction is like walking into a dense fog unarmed. You may still encounter souls, but you might misinterpret their messages or absorb their unresolved pain. That's why he advised prayer, intention setting, and alignment with a spiritual ideal before laying down the body. Not for piety, but for clarity. The Borderland also explains why certain dreams feel more real than life itself. That eerie sharpness, that lucidity, it's not imagination. It's evidence that the soul is conscious during its journey. It sees through the eyes of spirit, where perception is no longer filtered by brain chemistry or limited senses. But there's another reason this dimension is so critical. It is here that our grief begins to heal. To embrace someone you lost, even once, even in a dream, can transform a lifetime of sorrow. Cayce believed these encounters were divine gifts, proof that love endures beyond death, that the soul never loses its ability to connect, to guide, to console. Still, the Borderland is not a place to dwell. It is a passage. And like all passages, it invites movement. For those who carry spiritual preparation, who walk the dream space with openness and discernment, the journey continues beyond this veil. There are higher realms to reach, where time folds, where lifetimes are visible at once, where healing flows not from words, but from light. But we cannot reach those places until we first pass through the Borderland and learn to recognize it not as a place of fear, but as a place of reunion, reflection, and release. Tonight, if you find yourself speaking with someone long gone, don't rush to label it fantasy. Instead, ask yourself, what if my soul truly met theirs? What if I remembered only a fragment of something greater, something sacred? And what if that fragment was enough to shift something inside me forever? In the next step of our soul's journey, we move from meeting the dead to being guided by them, from visitation to instruction, from grief to wisdom. The Borderland opens the doorway, but what lies beyond is a realm even more ancient, more structured, and infinitely more luminous. The moment your soul recognizes that it is no longer tethered solely to the world of waking matter, the journey deepens. No longer merely passing through the Borderland in gentle reunion or silent reflection, the soul begins to encounter something far more profound: instruction. Not from textbooks, not from abstract flashes of insight, but from direct soul-to-soul guidance, the kind of knowing that bypasses intellect and lodges itself deep in the fibers of your being, changing you, even if you can't articulate how. Edgar Cayce emphasized again and again, these nocturnal encounters are not just comforting visitations, they are classrooms. Souls don't just meet, they teach. They don't only console, they direct. And for the prepared dreamer, this guidance can alter the course of a life. Take, for instance, the mother who approached Cayce in desperation. Her child was gravely ill, and modern medicine offered no path forward. She prayed with clarity and deep emotion, seeking help beyond what the visible world could provide. That night, in a dream too vivid to dismiss, her late grandmother appeared, calm and luminous. She spoke no words. Instead, she placed a small jar into the mother's hands, filled with herbs and roots. When the mother awoke, she remembered everything: the shape of the leaves, the preparation method, even the strange name of one root she had never heard before. Cayce later confirmed through a reading that this was no ordinary dream. It was a guided transfer of healing knowledge, directly soul to soul, facilitated by the soul's elevated state during deep sleep. The remedy? It worked. The child recovered. This is the brilliance and sacredness of these encounters. In the Borderland, we find reunion. But beyond, in the deeper astral corridors, our soul opens to learning. And those teachings can come from ancestors, guides, spiritual teachers we once knew in past lives, or from beings whose role is purely educational, a kind of cosmic mentorship. It's important to understand that not all dream encounters are guidance. Cayce taught that one of the keys to discerning true spiritual instruction is emotional signature. Dreams born from anxiety often feel fragmented, confused, and emotionally erratic. But guidance dreams carry a distinct charge: calm, clarity, a sense of truth that follows you into waking life. Even when their content is mysterious, they resonate with a frequency that pierces doubt, In Reading 5754-3, Cayce described a woman who received a warning about a business betrayal during one of these instructive dreams. Her deceased brother, long gone from this life, came to her not with affection, but with precision. He named the associate, revealed a conversation that had taken place in secret, and urged her to protect her interests. She listened. The betrayal happened, exactly as described, but because she was prepared, she lost nothing. Again, the dream was validated through a Cayce trance session, affirming its soul-to-soul origin. These are not anomalies. Cayce's archive is filled with such stories, and he stressed that this kind of soul instruction is not reserved for the few. It is accessible to all who are willing to prepare, not just physically through rest, but spiritually through alignment. How, then, does one open the channel for such guidance? It begins with intention. A question asked sincerely before sleep opens a thread. Cayce called it setting the spiritual ideal. When you seek guidance not for ego but for growth, healing, or service, the soul responds. And so do the guides who wait in those upper dimensions. Not to fix your life for you, but to remind you of the truths your soul already knows. Another key is receptivity. Often the answers we seek don't come in the form we expect. You may dream of a bird landing on your shoulder, only to realize later that the bird's song mirrored a melody your grandmother used to hum, a subtle nudge to return to your roots. You may dream of walking through a storm barefoot and awaken knowing that courage, not comfort, is what you need most right now. Soul guidance speaks in symbols, yes, but always with purpose. The greatest challenge in receiving this guidance lies not in the dreaming, but in the remembering. Cayce encouraged his clients to keep a notebook beside their beds, to write down even fragments upon waking. He believed that the act of capturing these experiences, however disjointed, created a bridge between conscious and subconscious, strengthening the soul's ability to transmit its nightly wisdom into waking awareness. But perhaps most beautiful is this. When we begin to recognize our dreams as true instruction, we stop seeing life as a struggle for answers. We begin to understand that we are being taught constantly, quietly, lovingly, by those who've walked before us, those who walk beside us in spirit still. Imagine your soul as a student who each night returns to a divine classroom, guided not by curriculum, but by karma, not by textbooks, but by memory. Each lesson tailored to your growth, your needs, your unfolding. And as we listen more, trust more, remember more, we begin to change. Subtle shifts at first, a clearer decision, a sudden forgiveness, a new kind of courage. But over time, the soul-guided life begins to resemble something else entirely. A life lived from the inside out, led not by reaction, but by revelation. Now, let us follow the soul one step further, to a realm that holds not only personal memory and loving ancestors, but the grand architecture of all souls, a library of every lifetime, every lesson, every echo of purpose that ever was or will be. There exists a realm so vast, so intricate, that even the most advanced spiritual seekers throughout history have struggled to describe it. Yet Edgar Cayce, while in trance beyond the limitations of human awareness, spoke of this place with unwavering clarity. He called it the Akashic Records, a term borrowed from ancient Sanskrit, referring to the subtle etheric substance upon which the history of every soul is inscribed. Cayce didn't just speak about the Akashic Records, he entered them. Night after night, in dream and trance, his soul reached this sacred library. And according to him, so can yours. The Akashic Records are not kept in some cosmic building tucked between stars. They are everywhere and nowhere, a vibrational field that stores the complete memory of every thought, action, emotion, and intention across all your lifetimes. When your soul sleeps and detaches from the physical body, it is freed to ascend. And when it ascends with clarity, reverence, and readiness, it can access this infinite archive, not as a casual observer, but as a seeker. But what does that look like? In one of the most powerful cases in Cayce's archives, a woman sought healing for her son who was suffering from a rare and incurable blood disorder. She had exhausted all conventional options. In her desperation, she turned to Cayce, who advised her to pray and meditate before sleep, to ask from her heart for her soul to be guided toward a source of healing. That night, she dreamed of a luminous library, vast, endless, with shelves that curved like galaxies. She was accompanied by a being of light who led her without speaking to a single book. The book opened by itself. On its pages, a list of herbs, a ritual of preparation, and a method of application more precise than any medical chart. When she awoke, she recalled every detail with surgical clarity. Following the instructions, she prepared the remedy, and within weeks, her son's condition began to reverse. Blood work normalized, energy returned. The doctors, stunned, called it spontaneous remission. Cayce called it exactly what it was: access to the Akashic Records during sleep, guided by the soul toward the knowledge it once knew but had forgotten. This isn't mysticism. It is memory, divine memory, retrieved by a soul ready to heal. But the Akashic Records are not only about healing the body. They are mirrors into past lives, revealing patterns and wounds that continue to echo in the present. Cayce often spoke of people who carried fears, illnesses, or compulsions without explanation, until, through a dream or a reading, they glimpsed a life centuries earlier where the original wound occurred. A woman paralyzed by fear of abandonment dreams of herself as a child in a war-torn village, holding the lifeless hand of her mother. A man terrified of water sees himself aboard a slave ship, shackled, submerged, breathless. These aren't hallucinations. They are soul memories, echoes stored in the Akashic Records, waiting for retrieval and resolution. The soul, when permitted, returns to these pages not for punishment, but for clarity. To see is to begin to heal. Cayce insisted that the Akashic journey is not about judgment. It is about understanding. The patterns you repeat, the people you meet again and again, the irrational drives you can't explain. The Akashic Records hold them all, like a divine puzzle box where the picture only forms when the seeker is ready to look without fear. And what's more, these records don't only show the past, they shimmer with potential futures. Not fixed destinies, but timelines of probability, shaped by the current trajectory of your thoughts, your actions, your soul's vibration. Cayce warned not to treat these as predictions, but as spiritual weather forecasts, indicators of what may come, should the present remain unchanged. He believed that when a soul accesses these records during sleep, it does so under the guidance of a higher self or spiritual teacher. These guides protect the soul from becoming overwhelmed. For this reason, many people don't consciously remember their Akashic journeys, only the aftertaste, a sudden sense of knowing, a shift in perception, a clarity that wasn't there before. Sometimes this knowledge filters into waking life subtly, like an intuition. Other times, it arrives like thunder, a creative breakthrough, a life-changing realization, a dream that wakes you in tears. Either way, it is evidence that your soul has read something in the night that changed it. Cayce encouraged spiritual seekers to approach sleep not just as rest, but as ritual. He advised meditating on a specific question or challenge, asking the soul to seek answers during its journey. He called this practice dream incubation, planting a seed that the soul could water and grow in the realms beyond thought. And it works. Hundreds of documented cases describe people awakening with solutions they never imagined, remembering conversations with spiritual beings who offered not flattery, but truth. One man asked in prayer, "Why do I fear being seen?" That night, he dreamed of a childhood scene long buried, a moment of humiliation that shaped his entire personality. Seeing it, feeling it, reframed it. He wept in his dream. He awoke changed. The Akashic journey is not always comfortable. It reveals the raw data of your soul. But it is always sacred. Always offered in service of growth. So tonight, before sleep, ask not just for peace, but for memory, for truth, for the courage to visit the library within you, the one that never closes, where every chapter of your soul waits patiently to be reread, re-understood, and rewritten with compassion. From this point forward, we step beyond personal memory and into cosmic communion. For after the Akashic halls comes a realm even more rarefied, a place not of books, but of being, where the soul doesn't read the truth, but becomes it. There is a realm beyond learning, beyond symbols, beyond even the sacred records of your past lives. In this realm, the soul is no longer a seeker of knowledge. It is a vessel for light, for healing, for the direct transmission of divine energy. Edgar Cayce called this dimension the realm of pure spirit. And only those souls prepared by love, humility, and alignment can enter it during sleep. But when they do, something extraordinary happens, not just in the dream, but in the body itself. Cayce described this spiritual layer as the highest of the three accessible dimensions the soul visits during sleep. It is not crowded like the Borderland, nor is it filled with books and memory like the Akashic realm. Here, the soul communes directly with what Cayce referred to as the creative forces, a phrase he used interchangeably with God, Source, Divine Mind. In this state, there are no guides, no questions, no separation. There is only presence, illumination, union, and it is in this radiant space that true spiritual healing takes place. One extraordinary case illustrates this with startling clarity. Martha Robertson, a woman suffering from a degenerative spinal condition that left her in relentless pain and virtually bedridden, came to Cayce after exhausting every medical option. He advised her not just physically, but spiritually. Each night before sleep, she was to perform a simple meditation, breathing in silence, aligning with her highest ideal, and asking from her soul to be shown what she most needed. 3 nights later, her dreams began to change. She no longer wandered dark corridors or replayed stressful scenes from life. Instead, she found herself in what she later described as a luminous temple. It had no walls, only pillars of glowing light. Beings surrounded her, not as doctors or angels, but as pure energy with form. They said nothing, but as they placed their hands over her back, she felt warmth. Then a humming vibration moved through her spine. It wasn't like touch. It was like music made into matter. This dream repeated for several nights. Each time, the sensation deepened. And then, one morning, she awoke and stood up without pain. Her doctors were stunned. X-rays showed regeneration in the vertebrae. Her body had begun healing in ways no treatment had predicted. Cayce confirmed in a later reading that Martha's soul had entered the realm of spirit and received etheric healing, a form of divine recalibration that only the highest realms can transmit. What is extraordinary is that this was not an isolated case. Cayce documented dozens of similar accounts, cases where individuals entered healing temples during sleep and returned with not just insights, but real physical shifts. Some recovered from autoimmune diseases. Others saw chronic depression vanish. One man even claimed to have had his eyesight partially restored after a dream where a being of light touched his eyes with a crystal wand. And these aren't stories of faith healing or placebo. These are examples of the soul realigning the energetic template of the body, the blueprint from which the physical form is derived. Cayce believed that all illness has a spiritual origin. The body, he said, reflects the vibrations of the soul. Change the vibration, and you change the condition. And nowhere is that transformation more direct than in the realm of pure spirit. But it isn't just about healing ailments. This dimension also offers revelation. In one trance reading, 294131, Cayce described his own soul's journey to this highest realm. There, he received visions that would later prove prophetic. The rise of a war in Europe, the appearance of a mustached dictator, the involvement of America in a global conflict. This vision occurred years before the outbreak of World War II. He described it not as a dream, but as a direct transmission from the divine mind, a knowing that bypassed all reasoning. He was not unique. According to Cayce, any soul can access this realm, not just psychics, not just saints. The only requirement is preparation, purity of intention, alignment with the highest good. He insisted that it is not status but readiness that determines access, and herein lies the greatest challenge and invitation. Because unlike the lower realms, the spiritual dimension does not come unbidden. It must be earned nightly through the state of one's consciousness. Cayce taught that souls burdened by fear, anger, or obsession with material concerns cannot rise above the denser planes. But souls that radiate service, devotion, and clarity of purpose, those can rise like mist toward the sun. He also taught that many of us touch this realm unknowingly. Have you ever had a dream where no words were spoken, but you woke up crying tears of awe? Have you ever felt the presence of something so vast, so loving, that you didn't want to open your eyes? These are the echoes of the spirit realm. The soul remembers even when the mind cannot. And even if the physical healing doesn't manifest immediately, something still changes. People return from these experiences with a gentler presence, a more radiant peace, a certainty that they are not alone, not in their suffering, nor in their becoming. And that is healing too. This realm reminds us that we are not bodies that possess souls. We are souls who temporarily inhabit bodies. And when the soul is given room to breathe, to ascend, to remember, it brings back not just knowledge, but light. The kind of light that doesn't just illuminate your path, but softens the entire way you walk it. As the soul descends again into sleep's subtler stages, it carries the imprint of that holy encounter. But the journey is not done, because in every human life, there is a deeper longing, not just to be healed, but to understand why we are here, what we came to do. And that answer lies in something Cayce called the blueprint of the soul, a divine plan drafted before birth, reviewed in the silent hours of sleep. Let us follow the soul there now. Every soul that enters the physical realm arrives with a purpose, not a rigid fate, not a pre-written script, but a blueprint. A living, evolving spiritual design that outlines your lessons, your gifts, your wounds, and your sacred contracts. Edgar Cayce, in hundreds of trance readings, called this the soul's blueprint, and he insisted that during sleep, when the body rests and the personality softens, The soul returns to this blueprint to review, remember, and realign. This is no vague metaphor. Cayce described it as a real interaction between your conscious self and a higher part of you. The oversoul, the divine architect that remembers who you truly are beyond time, roles, and stories. While the waking mind forgets, distracted by survival and performance, the sleeping soul remembers. And it does more than reflect. It recalibrates. In Reading 136:18, Cayce spoke of the soul returning each night to receive direction from those in charge of the blueprint, reviewing choices made, paths ignored, and whether current actions were in alignment with soul purpose. These weren't harsh evaluations, but gentle reminders, course corrections offered from a place of eternal wisdom. Let me show you what this looks like in a life. In 1942, a young man returned from war, physically unharmed but spiritually hollow. He couldn't sleep. When he did, he dreamed of a room filled with scrolls, each one glowing faintly. A tall being offered him a scroll with his name on it. He read it and wept. When he awoke, he couldn't remember the words, but something had shifted. He left his accounting job within weeks and began teaching children at a rural school. He said he finally felt like himself. Years later, during a Cayce session, the dream was validated. His soul had revisited its blueprint. The teaching path had always been part of his plan, but fear and expectation had steered him off course. The dream was a nudge, not a demand to return. This is the quiet miracle available to us each night, a chance to reunite with our why. But Cayce warned that most people miss this opportunity because they enter sleep unconsciously. Not just without intention, but clogged with the residue of the day. Stress, distraction, digital noise, spiritual indifference. And so the soul departs in a fog, wandering through lower astral debris instead of rising to its origin. To revisit the blueprint, Cayce advised a nightly practice of inner stillness. Just 10 minutes before sleep, he said, can open the gate. Sit in silence. Place your hand on your heart. Ask, what would you have me remember? What part of me have I neglected? What lesson am I here to complete? These are not affirmations. They are invitations, doorways. Your soul will hear them. And when it does, it will begin its journey not into chaos, but into clarity. Another powerful example. A woman in the 1930s who felt persistently lost, unable to find direction in life, came to Cayce not for health advice, but for existential guidance. After a dream in which she saw herself surrounded by musical instruments, guided by a radiant teacher who placed a violin in her arms, she began studying music, despite having no prior experience. Within a year, she was composing hymns that moved people to tears. Cayce confirmed that she had returned to her soul's blueprint, where music was not only a talent, but a tool of healing from prior lifetimes. It's important to understand, these blueprints are not commandments. You are never punished for forgetting them. But when you remember, when your soul touches the edge of that plan, you feel it like a tuning fork, a resonance, a magnetic pull that draws you toward who you were meant to be. And the soul doesn't only revisit its own path. Cayce spoke of meetings, times during sleep when multiple souls involved in a shared life contract gather to coordinate, forgive, or shift future possibilities. These are the dreams where you see someone you haven't met yet, or resolve a conflict with someone who hasn't spoken to you in years. These meetings, he said, are real. They are part of the divine architecture, the collaborative unfolding of destiny. Cayce also taught that some souls receive assignments during these blueprint reviews, not just for their own lives, but for service to others. A nurse might receive a whisper to change hospitals. A father may be nudged to begin writing the story he's buried for decades. These aren't random ideas. They are echoes from the oversoul, filtered down during sleep and waiting for action. But what happens when we don't act? According to Cayce, the blueprint remains, patient and unwavering. It never punishes, it waits. But the further we drift, the more our waking life begins to feel empty, misaligned, strangely familiar yet hollow. This is the feeling of a soul trying to speak through symptoms, boredom, restlessness, or even illness, urging the personality to realign. And the realignment doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes, it's as simple as remembering joy. A woman who dreamed of herself dancing in golden fields later joined a local movement class, rediscovered her vitality, and began mentoring young girls. In doing so, she felt whole again. "I didn't even know I'd gone missing," she said, "until my dreams brought me back." That's the power of the nightly return to your blueprint. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about recovering someone ancient, the real you, the one who volunteered for this life with eyes wide open. As we move forward in our journey, the soul doesn't just review, it begins to inquire. To ask questions not just of self, but of spirit. And when that inquiry is focused, planted like a seed before rest, something extraordinary begins to happen. The answers come. Let us now explore the sacred art of asking before sleep and how the soul responds. Not all answers come in daylight. In fact, some of the most life-changing revelations arrive quietly, wrapped in dream symbols or whispered by unseen voices in the night. Edgar Cayce taught that one of the most profound ways to receive divine guidance was through a deliberate practice known as dream incubation. This is not mere wishful thinking before bed, it is a sacred ritual. A soul-level question asked with sincerity right before sleep becomes a beacon. It draws response from the dimensions the soul is about to visit. And if you're listening, the answers will arrive. Dream incubation was not Cayce's invention. It dates back to ancient Egypt and Greece, where people would sleep in temples specifically designed for spiritual dreaming. They would pose a question to the gods or to their higher self and await instruction during sleep. What Cayce did was make the practice accessible again for modern souls, stripped of superstition, but infused with deep spiritual intelligence. So how does it work? Cayce advised setting aside a few quiet minutes before sleep. Write the question down. Speak it out loud if you can. Make it clear, simple, and free from ego. Don't ask, "How can I get more money?" Ask, "What would bring my soul into deeper alignment with abundance?" Don't ask, "Will they love me back?" Ask, "What do I need to learn about love from this connection?" Then lie down, not with anxiety or expectation, but with openness. As you drift into sleep, imagine your soul carrying that question like a sealed letter. Hand it over with trust to the invisible postmasters of the spiritual realms. The results may not be immediate. Sometimes the answer comes in fragments over several nights. Sometimes it arrives symbolically, a mountain, a mirror, a doorway. Sometimes it's a sensation, a knowing, a feeling of release or clarity that colors your entire day. Cayce emphasized keeping a journal by the bed. The moment you wake, even if it's 3 a.m., capture anything you remember. Don't edit, don't interpret yet. Just record. The act of writing creates a bridge, strengthening the soul's ability to communicate across the veil. One of the most moving examples comes from a woman struggling with infertility. Night after night, she posed the same question. What must I learn before I become a mother? After several weeks, She dreamed of herself walking through a garden barren at first. But as she watered a single plant with tears from her own hands, the entire field bloomed. When she awoke, she felt inexplicably at peace. A month later, she conceived. And 9 months after that, her son was born. She later told Cayce, "It wasn't that the dream made it happen. It's that the dream made me ready." This is the subtle alchemy of incubation. The answer isn't always what you want to hear. It's what your soul needs to evolve. You might ask about a job and instead dream of your childhood home, reminding you of a forgotten strength. You might inquire about healing and instead receive a visit from someone you need to forgive. The soul doesn't offer quick fixes. It offers transformation. And the beings who assist in this process, Cayce said, are often familiar. Guides from past lives, ancestors, facets of your higher self. Sometimes they take human form. Other times, they are light, voice, or feeling. The key is recognizing their frequency. They never incite fear. They never flatter ego. They bring a sense of calm clarity, even when the message is difficult. Dream incubation also reveals hidden creative gifts. Many writers, artists, and inventors Cayce worked with claimed to receive entire songs, stories, or inventions in their dreams, after posing a question the night before. Thomas Edison famously used this method, drifting into sleep holding metal balls that would drop when he lost consciousness, waking him just as the answer surfaced. But it's not limited to visionaries. A single mother, overwhelmed by work and sorrow, once asked simply, "How do I keep going?" That night, she dreamed of a candle flickering in darkness. A hand appeared, shielding the flame from the wind. She awoke in tears, knowing exactly what it meant. She didn't have to be the fire. She only had to protect it, night by night. Sometimes, incubation also brings warnings. Cayce recounted a man who asked, "What must I know to protect my family?" That night, he dreamed of flooding waters and a distant voice urging him to move. He dismissed it. But the next dream came stronger, this time with faces, names, and a map. He relocated. Weeks later, a natural disaster struck the area he left behind. Not all warnings are so dramatic, but many are timely. When you ask from the heart, the universe conspires to respond. Still, Cayce warned, there are also false answers, not from the soul, but from mental noise or astral interference. This is why spiritual protection is essential, a topic he explored deeply in later readings. But for now, the main protection is purity of intention. When your question serves truth, healing, or service, the answers you receive are more likely to reflect that integrity. And remember, silence can be an answer too. Not every question requires a response in words. Sometimes the soul simply absorbs, and you feel the shift later. In behavior, in energy, in clarity. Over time, dream incubation becomes more than a tool. It becomes a way of life, a nightly conversation with the deeper self, a sacred dialogue between the known and the infinite. So tonight, don't just drift into unconsciousness. Enter it as a seeker. Ask and listen. Not with your ears, but with your whole being. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore why protection matters. Because as your soul rises to higher dimensions, it also becomes visible in others. And not every force you meet in the unseen has your best interest at heart. The higher your soul reaches, the more visible it becomes. Not only to beings of light and guidance, but also to entities that dwell in murkier realms. Edgar Cayce knew this truth well. In many of his trance readings, he warned that while sleep offers profound opportunities for growth and revelation, It also exposes the soul to unseen influences that do not always serve its best interests. That's why he placed such strong emphasis on spiritual protection, a practice as vital as any prayer or meditation. Cayce likened the spiritual world to the physical. Just as there are trustworthy and untrustworthy people in waking life, so too are there benevolent and malevolent forces in the astral and spiritual dimensions. And when your soul steps beyond the body during sleep, it moves through realms where thoughts become form, emotion becomes matter, and intention draws energy toward it like a magnet. This is especially true for those experimenting with astral projection, lucid dreaming, or attempting to incubate dreams. The more deliberate the journey, the brighter the soul's signal. And just as a lighthouse draws ships, it can also attract attention from entities that feed not on light, but on confusion, fear, and imbalance. One particularly sobering case from Cayce's archive illustrates this with painful clarity. In 1938, a young man obsessed with mastering astral travel began experimenting nightly without any grounding practice or protection. What began as exhilarating exploration quickly devolved into terrifying nightmares. He awoke each morning more exhausted than the last. Soon he began to feel watched during the day and claimed he heard whispers even when alone. When he consulted Cayce, the reading, 2072-10, revealed that his soul had indeed become entangled in a lower astral realm. There, he had encountered earthbound spirits who latched onto his energy, draining him each night and slowly influencing his thoughts. Cayce described them as parasitic entities, disembodied energies drawn to the unguarded soul, feeding off unresolved fear and emotional weakness. The remedy was not exorcism, but preparation. Cayce gave him a specific sequence of spiritual protection techniques: daily meditation focused on light, a cleansing prayer invoking the Christ consciousness, and a nightly visualization of surrounding the body in a shield of radiant white light. Within weeks, the nightmares ceased, his health returned, the spiritual interference lifted. But why does this happen? Cayce explained that many lower astral spirits are not evil in the traditional sense. They are simply lost, fragmented, or clinging to the vibrational level of pain and confusion. Some do not even realize they have died. Others are former humans who, unable to release their attachments, linger in shadow realms. They are drawn to emotional resonance. A soul burdened by resentment, addiction, or fear becomes a familiar signal to them, an energetic echo. This is why spiritual protection is not about superstition. It is about vibration. What you carry into sleep determines what you attract. If your final thoughts are angry or fearful, your soul may gravitate toward densities that match. But if your final thoughts are filled with gratitude, service, and peace, you ascend naturally, beyond the reach of lower forces. Cayce recommended specific protective rituals for those sensitive to dream interference. White light visualization. Imagine your body surrounded by radiant, impenetrable light. Not hard or defensive, just pure and luminous. He called this the Christ light, but the term is symbolic. It refers to the highest frequency of spiritual purity and love, calling on guides. Before sleep, speak aloud or inwardly. I call on the guardians of my soul, those of light and wisdom, to walk with me through the night. Intention is everything. Even if you don't perceive them, help arrives when invited with humility. Cleansing the room. Cayce encouraged placing fresh flowers, burning natural oils like frankincense or lavender, or playing soft, sacred music before sleep. These elevate the vibration of the space, making it less hospitable to wandering energies. Forgiveness practice. Perhaps most important of all, Clear your emotional field before rest. Forgive what you can. Bless what still hurts. Unfinished anger is like blood in the water. It attracts what feeds on unrest. And for those who encounter distressing dreams, don't panic. Cayce taught that fear is a door. The moment you step into curiosity and prayerful command, you reclaim authority over your journey. One woman, plagued for years by dreams of shadowy figures, began reading Cayce's works. She learned to say, within the dream, "I walk with the light of truth." That single phrase transformed her inner world. The figures dissolved. The atmosphere changed. Her dreams became healing spaces instead of battlegrounds. This is not magical thinking. It is energetic sovereignty. You are not powerless in the astral. In fact, your soul is more potent there than here, if you remember who you are. Cayce also believed that spiritual protection doesn't only guard against interference, it creates a more stable channel for guidance. When your field is clear, the answers you receive are sharper. The beings who approach you are higher in vibration. Your own soul's memories rise more easily to the surface. But protection isn't just a pre-sleep practice. It is a lifestyle. What you consume, how you speak, who you surround yourself with, all of it creates your vibrational field. You are dreaming all the time, not just at night. The cleaner the waking life, the clearer the sleeping journey. And as your protection deepens, so does your access. The soul begins to unlock chambers once sealed, hidden healing, ancient memory. And eventually, something Cayce spoke of with reverence, the capacity to heal not just this life, but past lives too. Because beyond protection lies redemption. A space where the soul no longer needs to defend, but to restore. And in our next section, we will step into that dimension, a place where karmic wounds surface not to punish, but to finally be healed. Beyond the realms of guidance, revelation, and even protection lies one of the most transformative purposes of the soul's nightly journey: healing across time. Edgar Cayce revealed time and again that many of the afflictions we experience in our physical lives, be they illness, emotional trauma, or inexplicable phobias, are echoes from previous incarnations. These echoes do not disappear simply because we are unaware of them, but during sleep, the soul returns to these karmic imprints, and if ready, begins the work of karmic adjustment. To Cayce, karma was not punishment. It was memory seeking resolution, a loop waiting to be closed. And when the conscious mind rests, when the ego finally lets go, the soul is free to revisit the moments it once could not bear to face. Take the case of a woman who, since childhood, had suffered from a paralyzing fear of water. She had never experienced any near drowning or aquatic trauma in this lifetime, and yet the sight of a lake would cause panic. She couldn't bathe without anxiety. Her doctors called it irrational. But Cayce saw it differently. In writing 2391, he revealed that this woman's soul had drowned in a past life, trying valiantly to save her children during a flood. The trauma of failure, of helplessness, had etched itself so deeply into her soul memory that it carried over into this life. And though her current body was new, her energetic field still bore the imprint of that loss. Following Cayce's guidance, she began preparing for sleep with intention. She asked for healing, clarity, and peace. Within weeks, she had a dream. In it, she stood once again in rising waters, but this time, she succeeded. She reached her children, held them, carried them to safety. When she awoke, she wept, not with fear, but release. The change was instant. The fear dissolved. Not only could she take baths again, she learned to swim. Something deep had shifted. A karmic circle had been closed. This is the profound opportunity sleep offers. The chance to revisit and reframe karmic stories, not through force or analysis, but through experience. Immersive, healing, soul-led experience. Cayce described this process as soul therapy. The soul, during sleep, travels to scenes from past lives, often accompanied by spiritual guides. These scenes are not replays, they are living memories. And in this sacred space, the soul can make a different choice, offer forgiveness, release shame, or reclaim a lost truth. And because time in the spiritual realm is not linear, that healing ripples both backward and forward, reorganizing the energetic field of the current life. Another man, haunted by a deep sense of unworthiness, had spent his adult life sabotaging every opportunity that came his way. He dreamed of being a soldier who, in another life, had abandoned his battalion in fear. That guilt, never processed, had calcified into a core belief. I don't deserve trust. In his dream, he stayed. He led. He saved lives. And when he woke, something had changed. He didn't become suddenly fearless, but the voice of shame quieted. A new voice emerged, one that said, "You've made amends." That man later became a counselor for veterans, helping others carry burdens he once mistook as his own forever. Cayce emphasized that the soul chooses these healing journeys only when it is ready. These are not forced experiences. The psyche cannot be rushed. But when readiness aligns with intention, the soul moves with extraordinary precision. He also noted that many chronic physical ailments begin in this realm, not as bacterial or genetic phenomena, but as distortions carried from unhealed trauma. He spoke of back pain rooted in a past life betrayal, stomach disorders linked to starvation in another age, even blindness carried from a time when seeing the truth had led to death. This may sound poetic, but Cayce treated it as clinical truth. And more importantly, he offered hope that nothing is permanent when seen from the soul's perspective. Everything, every ache, every fear, every blockage is an invitation, and the doorway is sleep. So how do you invite this kind of healing? Cayce taught that before sleep, one must not only ask for healing, but surrender to it. I release all judgment of myself. I am willing to see the root of this pain. I ask for healing across all time. These are not magic words. They are permissions, signals to the soul that it may proceed with the work it came here to do. And just as with dream incubation, it is important to capture these dreams upon waking. Many karmic dreams are vivid, emotional, and symbolic. You may not immediately understand them, but your body will. You may feel lighter, or weep unexpectedly, or experience a calm that defies logic. These are signs that something deep has shifted, something ancient has been released. Cayce also warned that some karmic dreams may feel uncomfortable. They may bring up shame, regret, or confusion. Do not flee from these. These are the ones doing the deepest work. They are pulling out the root, not just trimming the branches. And you are not alone. Your guides, beings of light who have accompanied your soul across lifetimes, are present. They will not let you relive more than you are ready to face. They do not punish. They hold space. Their only goal is your evolution. And as more karmic knots dissolve, your waking life begins to transform. The same triggers no longer hold power. The same relationships soften. New paths open. Because you are no longer bound by invisible threads, you are being woven anew. So tonight, if you feel the weight of something you cannot name, something ancient and tight around your chest, know this: it may not be yours to carry forever. Your soul knows where to go. Your dreams are the doorway, and on the other side of sleep is freedom. As we move into the final stages of this journey, we leave behind wounds and enter remembrance. For the soul's highest task is not only to heal, but to remember what it truly is. When all is stripped away, past lives, burdens, even names, what remains is something luminous and true, the essence of your soul. And the deeper your journeys during sleep, the closer you come to touching that original spark. Edgar Cayce believed that sleep was not only a time of restoration, but of remembrance. The soul, freed from the gravity of identity and form, reconnects with what it always was, a divine, eternal being, carrying wisdom that stretches across galaxies and lifetimes. But Cayce went one step further. He said that your nightly journey is not just about where your soul goes, it's about what it sees. And the most sacred of all visions, he claimed, is the moment when your soul recognizes itself. This isn't egoic awareness. It is the shedding of ego. The moment in which the soul, stripped of its stories and scars, beholds its own light and remembers that it has never been separate from the source. For some, this moment is fleeting, a glimmer in a dream, a sudden feeling of boundless love, an overwhelming sense of peace so total that words collapse. Cayce called this the experience of soul union, and it is the highest purpose of spiritual sleep. Many clients of Cayce describe such dreams, unaware of their magnitude. A man spoke of floating in a field of stars, each one humming with music. There was no body, no thought, only light, and a knowing that he was the stars and the silence between them. When he awoke, he wept, not from sadness, but from remembrance. I touched something, he said, and now I know I've been chasing it all my life. Another woman dreamed of standing before a mirror that showed not her face, but shifting scenes from hundreds of lifetimes. Every role she had played, mother, warrior, slave, healer, thief, monk, queen, and in every reflection, one truth remained constant. Her eyes, the same gaze, the same soul. It shattered something in her. And when the dream ended, she said, I finally forgave myself for all of it. Cayce taught that this remembrance is available to every soul. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to escape the world. You only need to become willing to go inward, to ask, to surrender. Sleep becomes the altar where this willingness is laid. And something miraculous happens when the soul begins to remember. The waking life transforms, not always outwardly, but inwardly. The dramas lose their grip. The roles you cling to begin to soften. The judgments, both inward and outward, begin to dissolve. Why? Because you are no longer lost in the illusion of identity. You begin to live from the soul, not as a concept, but as an embodied truth. This is not abstract spirituality. It is a grounded, everyday transformation. A teacher who once shouted at his students now speaks with reverence. A doctor who once burned out now listens with empathy. A mother who once doubted her worth now raises her child with the wisdom of someone who knows this life is but one verse in an eternal song. Cayce described this as living in attunement. It means your outer choices begin to mirror the inner vision your soul sees while you sleep. You are no longer driven by fear or lack. You are moved by resonance, drawn to what aligns, and unafraid to release what no longer serves. And this shift is not just personal. As you remember your soul, others feel it. Your presence begins to change rooms. Your silence holds more power than your words. Your compassion deepens without effort. You are no longer trying to be anything. You are simply being, and that is enough. But remembrance also brings responsibility. Because once the soul begins to recall its vastness, it can no longer play small. It must choose each day whether to live from love or fear, whether to express truth or retreat into shadow. And it is here, in this daily choosing, that the soul's evolution accelerates. Nightly remembrance feeds daily courage. It is one thing to see the light. It is another to become it, moment by moment, breath by breath. And sleep is your training ground, your classroom, your cathedral. So what do you do with what your soul remembers? Cayce suggested 3 things. Act on the insights. When your dreams show you what matters, follow it. Call the person. Change the path. Begin the healing. Live in alignment. Let your actions reflect the truths you receive. If your soul remembers love, become loving. If it recalls service, become generous. Share gently, not with arrogance or evangelism, but with grace. Your story might unlock someone else's memory. You are not here by accident. You are not dreaming by chance. Your nightly visions are not just flickers of subconscious debris. They are sacred transmissions from the soul to the self. And when you begin to live from what your soul sees, you become something rare in this world, a living bridge between heaven and earth. As we approach the closing arc of this journey, we will explore how your soul's nightly work is not isolated. It continues to echo into your physical health, your relationships, and even your creative life. There are temples of light that you return to, again and again in the night. Not only for healing, but to remember how to bring that healing back. And that is where we now go. The soul's journeys during sleep are not limited to fleeting visions or isolated messages. They are sustained returns to places of power. Among the most sacred of these are what Edgar Cayce called the temples of light, spiritual healing centers that exist in higher dimensions, where souls go not only to be repaired, but to remember how to heal. These are not imagined spaces, but vibrant, living environments constructed from frequency, intention, and divine architecture. And they are more real than most people believe. Cayce described these temples as places the soul visits during deep states of sleep, particularly during illness, grief, or spiritual exhaustion. Here, the soul receives restoration not through medicine, but through vibration. Light is the healer. Sound is the language. Beings of immense compassion guide the process, not as doctors, but as facilitators of resonance. The soul is not treated. It is tuned back to its original frequency. Consider the story of a nurse named Margaret. During the height of World War II, she came to Cayce utterly depleted. Day after day, she had cared for wounded soldiers, many of whom died in her arms. Though her body kept functioning, her spirit was frayed. She questioned whether her efforts had any meaning, whether she had truly made a difference. Cayce told her to approach her sleep differently, not as escape, but as entry. He gave her specific guidance: to meditate each night before bed, visualizing herself in service, not just physically, but spiritually. To ask to be shown the higher dimension of her work. That very week, she dreamed of a massive structure filled with white gold light. Inside were souls, many injured, weary, or dimmed. But they were being tended to, not with tools, but with music and presence. She walked among them, and as she placed her hands over their hearts, they began to glow. One turned to her and said, "What you do on earth, you do here." When she awoke, the fatigue was gone. Her work resumed, but with renewed devotion. She later described her dream as more real than any moment she'd ever lived. Cayce confirmed in Reading 33951 that Margaret had visited one of the higher dimensional healing temples. He explained that her earthly service was not just labor, It was a reflection of her soul's role in the spiritual world. And through sleep, she had been reconnected to the deeper purpose beneath her daily routine. These temples are not reserved for the spiritually elite. Every soul has access, if it seeks with humility and alignment. Cayce emphasized that intention is the invitation. If you ask to be taken to a place of healing and release attachment to how it should look, your soul will be guided. But what happens there? Many report dreams where they lie on crystalline beds or beneath domes of colored light. Others describe music, not heard through ears, but absorbed by every cell. Still others meet beings they recognize as familiar, though they have no names. One woman, battling chronic fatigue, dreamed she was bathed in indigo and silver mist, while a chorus of tones swirled around her. She awoke with more energy than she'd felt in years. Science can't explain this, but Cayce's framework can. He taught that physical illness often results from distortions in the soul's vibration. When the etheric template, the energetic body, becomes fragmented through trauma, stress, or karmic residue, the physical form begins to reflect that misalignment. The temples of light do not treat symptoms. They recalibrate the soul. And when the soul reattunes, the body often follows. But these temples serve more than just healing. They are training grounds. Cayce said that many artists, healers, and spiritual teachers dream of these temples without realizing what they are. They return night after night to study sacred geometry, healing modalities, or vibrational music. And slowly, that knowledge filters into waking life, as intuition, innovation, or sudden creative breakthroughs. A musician once told Cayce that he dreamed of playing an instrument that didn't exist, a harp made of beams of light. The sounds he created brought people to tears in the dream. Upon waking, he composed a new piece that he claimed came from somewhere else. When performed, it moved audiences deeply, though he could not explain why. Cayce smiled and said simply, "You remembered. These moments are not rare. They are available to all who begin to see sleep not as unconsciousness, but as conscious return." Cayce also stressed that the benefits of these temples are cumulative. The more often your soul visits, the stronger the imprint. And over time, those frequencies begin to saturate your waking self. Your healing accelerates. Your intuition sharpens. You become more centered, less reactive. People may even comment on your presence, though they can't quite name what's changed. That presence is the echo of the temple, but one must prepare. These temples are reached not by effort, but by resonance. That means carrying forgiveness instead of resentment, humility instead of pride, sincerity instead of performance. Even if you feel broken, come honestly. The temples are not for the flawless. They are for the willing, and willingness is everything. So tonight, if your body aches, or your heart feels tired, or your spirit has forgotten its strength, consider saying this before sleep. Take me where my soul can be restored. Then release. Don't force the dream. Let it come. And if nothing comes at all, trust that the journey is happening anyway. Some healings occur beyond conscious recall, but the effects ripple through you nonetheless. In the next part of our path, we'll explore a truth even more surprising: that your nightly soul travel doesn't just transform you, it may actually affect others. That what you become in sleep might reach out beyond you, shifting the world in quiet, mysterious ways. As your soul journeys through dream and dimension, through temples of light and realms of memory, it is not only you who are changed. Edgar Cayce suggested something far more expansive, something radical even now. Your nightly soul experiences ripple into the lives of others. That is, your transformation in sleep may become a hidden healing for someone else. This isn't metaphor. Cayce saw it as vibrational law. He explained that souls are not isolated units of light, but nodes in a vast, interconnected web. Every thought, every action, every healing impulse generates a subtle frequency. And because souls are energetically entangled across lifetimes, families, and soul groups, what affects one may echo into many. Nowhere is this more quietly powerful than in the realms of sleep. Picture this: a woman, burdened with grief after the death of her mother, dreams she is in a peaceful meadow where a young girl runs toward her, laughing, radiant. She realizes, without words, that it is her mother in a past life. They embrace. No explanation, just a deep knowing. When she awakes, the sharpness of loss has softened. But weeks later, her estranged sister calls her for the first time in years, apologizing for a long-forgotten rift. When asked what changed, the sister says, "I had a dream about Mom. I just felt lifted." This is soul resonance in action. Cayce taught that the soul's nightly evolution is not contained. When your frequency shifts during sleep, through healing, forgiveness, remembrance, those changes send signals across your soul's web. Other souls, particularly those with whom you share karmic ties, feel it. Not always consciously, but subtly. A change in mood, a softened heart, a sudden idea to reach out. One particularly stunning case comes from 1940. A man came to Cayce tormented by guilt over betraying his best friend decades earlier. The friend had since moved across the country, and they hadn't spoken in over 15 years. Cayce instructed him to prepare before sleep with a specific intention: to ask forgiveness. Not by writing a letter, but soul to soul. That night, the man dreamt of sitting in a small chapel with his friend. No words were spoken, just presence, just peace. The next morning, he received a telegram. "I don't know why, but I dreamed of you last night. Felt like we talked. I forgive you. Please call me." This isn't magic. It's metaphysics. The soul speaks in a language older than language. It doesn't need permission to love, only willingness. And it doesn't stop at forgiveness. Cayce described how souls on paths of service often visit others in sleep, not to interfere, but to offer support. A mother, deeply attuned to her child, dreams of holding their hand in a dark forest. The next morning, the child confesses they'd been having nightmares, but last night, they felt safe. A healer dreams of placing light over a stranger's heart. Weeks later, that person reports a spontaneous emotional breakthrough, never knowing why. You don't need to be aware for your soul to serve. But the more consciously you prepare your spirit before sleep, the more intentional these connections become. This brings us to a practice Cayce quietly championed: offering your sleep for good. Before lying down, speak these simple words: "Use my soul's journey for the highest good." That's it. In that gesture, you become a vessel, a carrier of light across dimensions. You may not remember what your soul does, but the work will be done. And what of those who don't believe, who never ask, who forget their dreams? Cayce said they are still affected, because the soul operates regardless of belief. It does not wait for permission to love, to heal, to remember. It simply acts according to the laws of spirit. But belief does help. It strengthens the bridge between the conscious and the soul. It invites collaboration. And over time, it makes the soul's impact in waking life more visible, more felt. Think of how many breakthroughs in your life were preceded by dreams. How many inner shifts happened not because of a conversation, but after a night of unexplainable stillness or vision. Perhaps that wasn't just your soul at work. but someone else's, visiting you in love. Cayce saw the future not as a place of war or division, but of subtle revolution. Not political, but energetic. Millions of souls awakening in sleep, choosing love, choosing forgiveness, choosing alignment, and letting those choices ripple outward. It won't be on the news. It won't trend. But it will be real. A quiet uprising of spirit through the night. So tonight, what if you offered more than your questions? What if you offered your soul, not just to heal yourself, but to serve the healing of those connected to you through time, blood, and spirit? You may never know who is reached, but trust, someone will be. And as we enter the final section of this journey, we turn now to integration. To the practice of taking all these dream revelations, spiritual encounters, and soul awakenings, and bringing them into daily life. Because the real purpose of the soul's nightly journey isn't just to ascend, it's to return and live what it saw. All sacred journeys eventually lead home, and so too must the soul's nightly voyage. No matter how radiant the visions, no matter how profound the revelations, return to the body, the breath, the ordinary rhythm of daily life. But here lies the greatest test and the true purpose of all spiritual sleep: integration. What good is divine wisdom if it dissolves by morning? What value are dream healings if they are not embodied? Edgar Cayce knew that the real miracle wasn't just that the soul could travel, it was that the soul could bring something back. This is where most forget. The alarm rings, the phone buzzes, and the memory of flight is replaced by the noise of obligation. But if you train yourself, gently and daily, you can begin to catch the soul's voice before it fades. Hold it close like breath on a mirror, and let it shape the day ahead. Cayce taught that one of the first practices of integration is recording. Not just the obvious dreams or the ones with vivid imagery, but all of it. A symbol, a feeling, a single word. These are clues, threads, and over time, they form patterns. You begin to see that your soul isn't random, it's consistent. Teaching you, prompting you, building a language all its own. One man came to Cayce in despair. His dreams, he claimed, made no sense. Colors, sounds, fragments of unfamiliar places. But Cayce instructed him to write them anyway, every morning. Within 3 weeks, a theme emerged. Doorways, sometimes opening, sometimes locked. One night, he dreamed of finally stepping through. That very week, he received a job offer in a field he'd never considered, but always loved. He took it. His entire life shifted. "I wasn't interpreting dreams," he said. "I was living them." This is what Cayce meant by conscious sleep. You don't have to understand everything. You only need to respect the process. The soul will do the rest. Another vital practice is stillness. Upon waking, resist jumping into the day. Lie still. Let the dream's residue settle into your skin. Ask, what did I feel? Who did I meet? What truth is trying to follow me into waking? You'll be surprised how often answers arise, not in language, but in knowing. Cayce also recommended rituals of remembrance. These are small daily practices that echo the truths the soul encountered in sleep. If you dreamed of healing hands, offer someone comfort that day. If you saw yourself dancing in light, let your body move, even if just for a minute. If you were forgiven by someone long gone, write them a letter you'll never send. These acts seal the soul's work into the body. But integration is not only personal, it is relational. When your soul returns with deeper peace, it radiates outward. Your presence becomes calmer. Your reactions soften. Conversations shift. People may not know why, but they will feel safer around you. This is how the soul works. Quietly, powerfully, invisibly. And it builds. Cayce often described the compound effect of spiritual sleep. The more you prepare, remember, and act on your soul's messages, the more powerful your dreams become. You begin to access higher dimensions more quickly. You start to receive not just personal guidance, but collective insight, messages for your family, community, even humanity. And perhaps most beautifully, you stop fearing the unknown. Because when you touch the light of the soul each night, death is no longer a mystery. Purpose is no longer elusive. You realize that you are not becoming a soul. You are simply uncovering what has always been there. You live differently, more slowly, more intentionally, more kindly. And even your sleep changes. It becomes sacred again. A place not of collapse, but of pilgrimage. Not a retreat from life, but a return to the truth behind it. Cayce gave one final instruction to those who wish to live this way. Each night before you close your eyes, give thanks. Set an intention. Ask to be of service, then let go. Trust that your soul knows what to do. And so now, we come to the close, not of the journey itself, for that continues each night, but of our remembrance of it. As you prepare for sleep tonight, remember this: you are not merely going to rest, you are preparing to rise, to travel through light and shadow, to remember your origin, to revisit your purpose, to heal old wounds and receive new strength, to meet the ones you've loved before, to be guided toward who you are becoming, and if you're willing, to bring it all back, so that when morning comes and the world greets you once again, you are not just awake, you are aware, and the soul's work can begin anew. Sleep is not escape, it is invitation. Each night, a portal opens, not in some distant sky, but inside you. In the stillness between breaths, your soul lifts, not to wander, but to return, to the temples of memory, to the realms of wisdom, to the corridors where love and light never left. Edgar Cayce left us a map, not of geography, but of consciousness. His readings do not ask us to believe blindly. They ask us to listen to the part of ourselves that already knows. And what it knows is this: your dreams are not accidents. Your sleepless nights are not wasted. Your sudden awakenings at 3:33 a.m. are not meaningless. They are calls to remember, to serve, to evolve. Tonight, before you drift into sleep, pause. Place your hand over your heart. Whisper to yourself, not in fear, but in trust: I am ready to remember. Then surround yourself in light, not just to protect, but to invite. Invite your guides. Invite healing. Invite clarity. Invite whatever your soul has waited lifetimes to bring back. And when you awake, listen. Maybe it's just a color, a face, a sentence, or a feeling that lingers like soft wind. Write it, live it, honor it, because what your soul sees while you sleep is not a dream. It's the beginning of your awakening.